All my life, I've loved to read. And what nobody knew is that a lot of the books I buy, I not only buy with me in mind, I like to think I buy them with my daughter in mind. I want her to read my books, which is why I get an array of topics that can spark the imagination, just in case she does not have my taste. Look at me, making space. I always wanted to be a mom, even before I realized I really did not have parents. I just love kids to the core and have always had a sort of guardian energy. My face, for some reason, screams her. Show her our Google Maps and see if we're going right. I just look helpful, and I'm a personality that will go out of its way to help, even if I've got nothing. It is a quality I'm learning to re enjoy about myself because I've helped a lot of people. Some were grateful and kind, and others were resentful and mean, but none of them were myself, which is why dreaming of my daughter in some ways is like me bridging into my inner child. Before she learns all the ways the world will and will not love her, I, unlike my parents, just want her to know I always will. My love is unconditional, unlimited. Ah. For my parents, I was a burden. For my dad, I tied him to a crime, multiple marriages he could have gotten away with and perhaps might again, but my existence displayed a red flag that it would take him years to convince people to pretend it never was there. For my mother, she could have remarried, taken a few years off to heal from the con my father pulled, and meet a great guy and have kids, particularly boys, which she always wanted. Instead, I was the chain to a haunted house nobody really wanted to walk into. And they made me feel it, which made me feel bad for my mom. My mother said she had a vision of me when she was 21 years old, which makes me feel bad because by the time she would have me, around 32, she'd be in a nightmare. According to legend, she was in her room, but in one of those weird, am I awake dreams? Where you know you're not awake, but yet you feel your dream so vividly. She was sitting in her bed, doing her college essays, when an angel knocked on her door and said, "Here, your daughter," and threw her a baby. She became desperate, in shock, as the baby flew to her and she had to grab it. She says she knew it was me, and that the baby had a million braids in her long hair, of which growing up I did always braid my long hair in tens. When she looked up, the angel was gone, and all that was left was an empty lit doorway and a smiling baby in her hands. According to her, that is how she knew she would always have a girl. But I've never dreamt of my kids as much as felt them, which is why, whether it is an angel or my inner child, I buy them books. Something tells me either way, they're dreamers. All right, let's heal, let's discuss. So it's so weird because I think, and it's something that I mentioned in a prior episode when I was talking about my friend Rio, and she's going through postpartum, and her and her husband are just going through this existential crisis of really trying to raise their kids in ways that they weren't. And I think every parent is trying has always wanted to do that. I don't know if my dad did. I think my dad was a person that loved to be, I always say that, loved to be loved, never loved. And he only saw people as how they fed him. So I don't know if he necessarily dreamed of the safety of family because he made all his families unsafe. My mom made the mistake that I make sometimes, which is why I kind of, whether or not I have children, whether how I formulate as a mom, because I've always been the mom to cousins and my little cousins, and I've always had this mom energy and help raised other people's kids, the fun auntie. But whether or not I get that experience so personally, which is different beyond having 20 million dogs, we will see. And I think my mother made the mistake that I make sometimes, which is I think she thought having a family will make her feel safe in a family setting. She always felt safer with friends than she did with family. And I think that was incredibly true even in our dynamic. The way she went out of her way for her friends versus me, it was just, I mean, just this week, she's been visiting a friend who has been in the hospital, goes to see her every day. And when I was in the hospital, she just didn't visit me. They had me on oxygen and everything. And and it's an upcoming episode. My grandmother was in town. My grandmother just stays, watches novela all day, but she doesn't like to be left alone. And it just didn't matter. they just, I had to understand their boundaries. And it's something that does always stays in my mind as cruel and kind of emblematic of this real problem I have with them and this this understanding, this overwhelming understanding that I had to understand everybody's boundaries, my dad's crimes, my dad's personality, my mother's pain, but nobody saw me. And I think that's why I mentioned I became resentful of my kindness, and I literally stopped it from I've always been, damn, I wish I was mean, damn, I wish I was vindictive, because my kindness and my sweetness was abused and was an entryway for really dark personalities to kind of sweep me. And now I'm realizing that you have to make sure you're kind to you. And never, that was never taught to me. The concept of being kind to you, the concept of taking care of you first and foremost, the concept of putting the oxygen mask over your face. So, before you put it on anyone else's. And I think my mother, one of the greatest sadnesses is that she really wanted her family because she was the black sheep of her family, and my grandmother was the black sheep of her family. And it's something that I have realized: if they don't like your mom, they don't like you. Period. And that went from my father really turned my father and his other wife really turned my siblings against me and kind of convinced them my mom isolated me. But the truth is, they didn't want me, and they made that clear. And at the end of the day, it's this thing that I'm trying to heal of, on one hand, I understand you're going to choose your parents. On the other hand, I I don't they didn't have the right to villainize me because of what he did. And that's on their character. And it's one of those things where I think about it a lot, particularly in terms of my sister. The last I heard, she didn't have kids, and my father was always talking about her difficulties in in relationships, and like, even if they're long term, they're not forever. And he never saw the connection between how bad he was as a father to how bad she was with men, if it's true, right? Because this is him complaining about her and just wondering. My father made me his punching bag, made my sister, the sister I know of, his protector. And I failed as a punching bag because I resisted taking on so much pain. She succeeded as a protector because she didn't mind writing letters to family members saying they were horrible for him. And she got more materially because of that. But spiritually, we both had to have end up chipped, because my father, to love my father, you had to kill a part of you. You had to kill some level of reality to love him, which is why I think he was obsessed with his grandchildren. Obviously, children, we're gonna try to hide secrets from them and make sure they don't know until eventually they do, because that's the thing about my experience. When I look about at my childhood, it was a great childhood in the sense of I was really good at not seeing things. They were obsessed with making sure I didn't see things. And yet, my adulthood feels like this kind of, what was my childhood, right? What was this childhood where I was loved by people that really didn't love my mom. And at the end, we all went our separate ways. So, was it love? I was I laughed with people that really wanted me to lose, that wanted their kids to succeed better. Was it really love or just me making do with what I had? And I say that they will eventually find out all about my father because I did. And it's just I don't think what I always say, what made my father's dangerous was he didn't bury secrets, he buried people. And the problem is people are alive. And one of the reasons I've always felt endangered with daddy recovery is that my dad did watch me even though I was gone from his life. And it was this, I mean, now it's over, it's done, be gone, be at peace, sir. Um, but that always made me unsafe because the more secrets I learn about my dad, the more I am like really shocked at the lengths he will go to destroy someone and to kind of send somebody else to do the crime he would like if he can't do it. And that really trips me out. That makes me feel really unsafe. And I can't imagine my sister necessarily felt safe. And I imagine that she compartmentalized too in some ways, of kind of, to have a dad, I have to act like men don't, cheat with a lot of women, marry a lot of women at the same time, hide, lie, leave their kids without lights, without electricity, without water, don't mind leaving them homeless. I have to act like men are not that capable of such evil to have my dad. But when it comes to picking my man, my boyfriend, how do I pick them? Do I pick them materially? Do I make sure they're rich? So I not only make sure that he has enough, but he's not going to take from me. So then I'm dating according to class, right? But even if I date according to class, I mean, some of the richest men, my dad is a perfect example, are the most volatile and vindictive with their money. It doesn't matter if they ate their foot as a child, they will put their foot in your ass as an adult just to protect their 2 cents. And what was wild about my dad and not making that connection was the minute he made her his protector, or what he said, guard dog, he also killed in some ways her capacity to feel safe with men, to feel like she didn't need a strategy to fall in love. And whoever she picks, if she picks, will have to heal something in her. And my father really did marry unhealed women because, again, to love him, you did have to kill a part of you. You did have to ignore red flags. My mother, I was talking about how there is this concept of men who cheat a lot on women and are very promiscuous, like my dad, might be DL. And I don't give a hoot about sexuality. I really don't. I don't give about a hoot about sexuality. I give a hoot about hurting women. So that's my only thing about DL or bearding. As somebody who has fallen in love with the wrong people and fallen in love with people that didn't love her back, don't use me. Don't use me as a cover up for you to have experiences that you know you couldn't get on your own, or you to have experiences in secret. I just don't use me, because no matter what, Kris Jenner is a perfect example. She did love Bruce. She loved Bruce, and Caitlyn can go off and say she knew, she didn't know, she could have stayed, she didn't, and kind of start this hate campaign against a woman that is the real victim, in terms of, you owned your truth and resented me for being your mask. And the world is going to judge me for how I am as a mask, while I try to wrap my brain over the fact of how the hell did I end up being a mask? Because that was the thing about my dad. He was such a good liar. And I feel with my mother so bad that she dreamt about me, because she would have me in a nightmare scenario. Maybe the angel was saying, you're going to get a little light out of this future bad situation. Um, and what I felt really bad, my mother prides herself on being incredibly intelligent. And it's a great attribute. It tends across the board. The problem with that is, if you get conned by somebody, you were a little dumb, right? And the world will rather judge a woman on her intelligence rather than a man on his danger, right? It's not that he was a rapist, it's that she wore a skirt and a short skirt after midnight, girl. And my father was really good at lying. He only lied. So what I feel is that bad for my mom, and one of the reasons she was so desperate to kind of be a part of his PR campaign. Look, he's a lawyer. He's not a thief. He's a lawyer. Was she couldn't walk away from the situation, not looking dumb. She couldn't say he threatens me and my reputation. That's why I can't get child support. She can't say that he literally threatens her livelihood. He was like, "I'll make sure you lose all the money just in trying to get money. I only get paid in cash." And at the end of the day, he won. He did win. And people will judge her on her intelligence, on maybe she wasn't strong enough. But they won't judge him for testing her intelligence, for testing her strength, and acting like it was love. And that's what I was saying. To love my father, you had to die a little. You had to die as a little girl. You had to die as a woman. You had to die as a child. You had to die as a son. You had to die to love this man. You had to die as a mother. I mean, I remember when my grandmother apologized to my mom. My grandmother enabled my father a lot, and I think she did it as some sort of recompense for his childhood trauma. And she cried because he had humiliated her, and she thanked my mom for comforting her and being such a good influence on him. But the thing about what my grandmother didn't see is that my mother elevated my dad sunk her. And she was, "I don't know why he's this way. I don't know how he came out this way. I'm so embarrassed." And my father lost his mind. He just did not see how evil he became because he was so hurt at the evil he supposedly faced as a child. And I don't want to end up that way, because I always say you could be so traumatized, you never realize you're traumatizing. Like my father, again, proud my sister protects him, doesn't see that she has to die as a little girl to do that. Never made the connection. Doesn't mind erasing me so that his grandkids think he was the perfect guy. Problem is, in my experience, and that's why I mentioned my looking back on my own childhood, the truth always comes out. And maybe he's hoping that, maybe his hope was I die before all the truth comes out. You know what I mean? Good hope, good hope. Sometimes it happens. It's a good hope. Don't knock that hope. Um, but then it's again this energy of walking away from the mess. You guys somebody else handle my mess, because I don't have the emotional cojones to handle the mess. I have I have the boldness to make it, not the boldness to clean it or confront it. And what I think is wild is when I dream of my kids, I dream of a clean slate, which is why I'm doing Daddy Recovery. Daddy Recovery is to help me as an artist, to recover my artistry, my inner child, and to move into a space where I could have kids, or I could make peace with this motherhood energy that I've always carried. And I think of them, I buy them. I never dreamt of my kids. I always felt them. Like I just felt my children. And I don't know if it's I'm feeling my inner child or some guardian angel, cherubim. But I just think to myself, I want, I just want all the mess gone. Like you're not here to heal me. You're here to love and be loved and learn what love is and learn what loving yourself is. I want you to read every single book. I want you to find your own style. I want you to find whatever you need to find: sexuality, Date every race. Jill, what, Mom? I'm a part of a religion. Just don't be a cult. Like I want them to explore themselves so freely because I wasn't allowed to explore myself. I was capped because the more I explored myself, the more I challenged the adults around me. I was a happy child that they all thought became a sad adult for no reason. I was a creative child that they all thought died a little as an artist for no reason. But I was made to compete with people that wanted to cut off my legs. I was made to care for people that didn't even make sure I was alive, let alone people knew of my existence. So I find it so curious that something as basic as me buying books, I buy with the intention of my kids. Like I bought this. I've never read um, Alice in Wonderland, and it's gonna make me cry. A few weeks ago, I bought the Spanish version of Alice in Wonderland, this beautiful illustration book. I bought it in Spanish because I want my kid to learn multiple languages, and I was blessed to grow up in a household that spoke English and Spanish and to be fluent, bilingually fluent. But all of the other languages I learned on my own. I learned French. I love languages. And I just want her to do that, you know? And I want her to read these books. And I say her, which is why I say maybe it's my inner child. And sometimes, God, if baby clothing wasn't so expensive, I would have already bought her dresses. You know what I mean? I would have already bought her little baby toys. And I kind of did actually. Um, I dream of giving to her in response to how I was born to give to my parents. And I just want her to receive. I want her to have the total opposite childhood. I just want her to receive. And if that makes her spoiled, and if everyone says you're spoiling her, because that was another obsession with my family. Oh, she's so spoiled. Look at her, look at her, look at her, look at her. I was the most unspoiled child on the planet, unfortunately. Well, let me not. Okay, that's actually very privileged of me to say. That's not true. But my parents never gave me anything that they didn't want for themselves. My mother always wanted to go to Disney. We went to Disney. My mother always loved Barbies, so she only got me Barbies. And the minute I liked something that they liked, I was being spoiled and that had to get cooled off. I only ate the meals they wanted to eat. Like there was nothing of, I never got a self discovery period unless I was isolated, which is, I was reading about childhood trauma. A lot of kids that suffer from childhood trauma have the tendency to stay up late and have kind of this 2 in the morning zoomies, this 3 a.m. reignition of energy, because it's when everyone is quiet and they internally feel the most safe to be themselves. And I'm doing workouts at 3 in the morning. I really am. So I want her to sleep. I want her to sleep through the night. Even when she's 30, I want her to be such a good sleeper. I don't want her to wake up anxious. I want her to have felt so safe with me. So safe with me. I want her to know that I love myself enough to love her with or without a dad, with or without a family, with or without the world. So I'm getting her books. But yeah. Oh, well, at least I was handed it to her by an angel. She got me with my dad, but I was handed to her by an angel. That says something. God loves me. Check out addictrecovery.com. Check out theandrewreviews.com. Check out How to Be on all music platforms. Let's get better, right?